Hello and welcome to day 8 of our 14-day roller coaster road trip across America's amusement parks. In this episode, it's our first time visiting a park that's been on my bucket list for quite some time, thanks to an unusual roller coaster that was made from converting an old dark ride into quite a quirky full-size roller coaster where you ride inside cages to keep you protected. It's going to be interesting. The infamous lost coaster of Superstition Mountain. I can't wait to get on this. Also, we'll get to ride Magnum Force. It used to be at my home park of Flamingo Land. After a stay in Mexico, it's opened at Indiana Beach in 2024. How will it ride 19 years since my last ride? How has it aged? Like a fine wine or like milk on a windowsill? With 7 credits to collect to get a full house on the roller coaster bingo card. And also in this collection of rides is America's roughest roller coaster lurking. Which one will it be? And by the end of the day, we'll make the journey across to Ohio and Kings Island for one of our favourite night rides. And spoiler alert, it's not the Beast. All this and more coming up on day 8 of the USA roller coaster road trip. Hey, this is Stu for Outback Travel. I make videos like this one in the hopes that it can inspire your own theme park adventures. If you enjoy the video or find it helpful in some way, please help me out by smashing that like button and subscribe. Thank you very much. You join us as we just passed the halfway point, day 8 of our 14-day road trip. Back in the summer of 2024, we bought a fly drive package with Virgin Holidays that gave us direct flights from London to Boston, checked luggage and a car rental with Hertz, including 3 additional drivers, all for the amazing price of just £599 per person. From Boston on the East Coast, we travelled up through New York, visiting the quirky and charming Six Flags Great Escape, the super fun Six Flags Darien Lake, had our butts slapped at Waldermere on the fantastic Ravine Flyer 2. We then spent 2 days at Cedar Point getting the humps. A slight diversion to Mount Olympus, where the car parking cost us more than our park tickets combined for the 4 of us. And then we've just visited Six Flags, not all that great America. So we're now about to start the return leg of our route back to Boston, which will take us through Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania and up to Massachusetts before we fly home. Our first drive of the day is a 163-mile trip south around the edge of Chicago, 2.5 hours from Gurnee to Indiana Beach. With a time zone change from central to eastern, we'd also lose out on this drive too. So just another quirk to think about when you're driving across continental America. There's 4 time zones to think about, just to make it a bit more complicated. The route took us through many cornfields. It was pretty much the classic Simpsons episode where they take the shortcut to Itchy and Scratchy Land, which made for an interesting journey this morning. Indiana Beach is just a stop off today, and our end destination will be Kings Island, just north of Cincinnati in Ohio. We were visiting Indiana Beach on a Friday and the park was open from 11 AM. That helped with that time zone difference to 9 PM. We arrived just in time for opening. Crossing the suspension bridge over the creek is a pretty unique way to enter the park. The park reminds me a lot of a seaside park, despite it being inland, but has that classic feel as it borders the waters of Lake Shafer and the Tippecanoe River. So let's look at the roller coaster bingo card. We have 7 roller coaster credits available to collect. Today at Indiana Beach, we've got the All-American Triple Loop, a Schwarzkopf Triple Looping Coaster, like I say previously from Flamingo Land, Cornball Express, a 2001 CCI wooden twister coaster, Cyclone, your standard Galaxy Zinklon steel coaster, Hoosier Hurricane, a 1994 out and back CCI wooden coaster, the Lost Coaster of Superstition Mountain, the legendary Dark Ride cum roller coaster, Steel Hog was the first ever S&S El Loco coaster, and the Tig'rr, a Schwarzkopf Jetstar 1, where you ride in small toboggan-like cars through tight helixes. Not much to get on today. We plan to leave the park by 3 or 4 PM at the latest for the 3.5 hour drive to Kings Island for some night rides before the park closes at 10 PM. I always like to prioritise the unique rides and the ones with a lower throughput that might get a long line, so Lost Coaster of Superstition Mountain was our first stop. We had to wait a few minutes for the technical team to complete their checks, but it didn't take too long, around kind of 10 minutes in all. The trains are made up of 2 cars, each seating 4 people, where you sit face to face in essentially a cage with netting surrounding you. It's certainly a unique ride vehicle. The ride starts with an unusual for a wooden coaster vertical elevator lift before a series of ridiculously tight turns and dips through Superstition Mountain, a former dark ride like I say. The coaster is a non-stop ride, so fun, out of control, a bucket list coaster that really lived up to its hype. I love this ride. Next up we did Cyclone, a standard Zinklon or Galaxy coaster. So this is credit 2 out of 7 on the Coaster Bingo card. It was only running 1 car, so I was glad we got a ride before it gained a queue. The only thing interesting about this ride is that the park have slotted it between some water slides, and that's probably the only interesting thing about this ride. Den of Lost Fees is an interactive ride that goes upstairs above the concessions below, therefore the cars can only take the weight of 1 adult, so another one to try and rope drop as the line can be slow moving. At this point in time we were struggling for things to do as the rest of the coasters hadn't opened. There's definitely a laissez-faire approach to operations at this park, which is totally fine to have staggered openings, but it'd be good to communicate this to your guests to help us plan our day. Next up we rode the Sky Ride, for me the scariest ride of the day. It just feels so sketchy being suspended from a picnic bench with the boardwalk below you from what feels like a coat hanger. The Sky Ride did give great views of the lake and the rides below, including a little soar over Superstition Mountain. After we got off the Sky Ride, Cornball Express had opened, one of the 2 double trouble of the traditional style wooden coasters at the park. This one has a slightly more twisted layout, with the layout that encircles the back section of the park. The lesser spotted fixed position lap bar means you really feel the airtime. This one has lots of kinky drops. Hey, not like that, get your mind out of the gutter. Each of the drops bends to the left or the right as it kind of reaches the bottom, which makes for lots of fun and interesting forces. Hoosier Hurricane opened up too. This one has the more out and back style layout running the length of the park. Again, silly air time in the steep plunges, a really fun coaster with that wild woody edge. So we're now 4 out of 7 on the Coaster Bingo card. At this point, Tig'rr, Steel Hog and Triple Leap were all still shuttered up. So we had something to eat and soaked up the atmosphere, which is immaculate. The park has lots of classic American style flat rides, like your flying scooters, tilt-a-whirl and yo-yo swing, which for us Europeans are interesting, some of which are built on elevated decks over the water, which is also kind of interesting. There was also a complimentary boat ride on the paddle steamer, definitely a lovely attraction for the park to offer. After a couple of laps on the big woodies to fill the time, Steel Hog was set to open. It ran 1 car and broke. Ugh. To the park's credit, they were visibly working on it for the rest of the day, but it didn't reopen before we left. It's okay, as I have Mumbo Jumbo, its evil twin, at home, so it wasn't a big loss for us. We were told that because Steel Hog had closed so abruptly, they were going to do all they could to get Triple Leap open quickly, but an hour later, and after a large crowd had gathered, the ride finally opened. So I haven't ridden this roller coaster in 19 years since it was last at Flamingo Land, and when I was back at university I actually worked as a host on Magnum Force, so I do have quite a little sentimental connection to this ride, and it was great to see such an old friend after so long. Triple Leap is now running trains from the defunct Mindbender roller coaster from Canada's Edmonton Mall. which at the time we rode it had the weird accordion shoulder clips, which in theory restricts your upper body movement to keep you nice and secure during the ride. However, in practice, it just meant that you were brutally pummeled from the restraints during every jolt and jank along the track. As I said, I do have quite a sentimental connection to this particular roller coaster, but it was just frankly depressing to experience it riding so roughly. One of the worst roller coaster experiences I've ever endured. Since we visited, the park has taken away the shoulder restraints, but to be honest, there's a lot of potholes in the ride, so I'd be interested to see how it does ride now the shoulder harness has been taken away. At this point in the early afternoon, Tig'rr still hadn't opened, and we were told by the engineers leaving the ride that it was ready now and it just needed an operator to come over and turn it on. The staff were absolutely so lovely and genuine at this park. It really was a fantastic kind of customer service, but again, the process of the operator coming over took over an hour. Normally I'd really chastise the park for not having it shipped together in terms of operations, but there was just something charming and endearing about the vibe at Indiana Beach, so I wasn't too mad, and I can't help but fall in love with this place. Riding Tig'rr was fab. The tiny cars rattling around the questionable clearance of this old Schwarzkopf was fantastic, and gives us a final coaster bingo score of 6 out of 7 creds, only spited by Steel Hog. Overall, Indiana Beach was charming, and I loved the waterside setting, the rides stacked on top of each other, the great American kind of flat rides, interesting collection of coasters, and boardwalk style food and vibes. The only negative is the stairs to get up to the wooden roller coasters, especially Cornball. It's a silly amount of steps. You're definitely getting your cardio in for sure, but worth it for the fixed lap bar rides. We left Indiana Beach at 3:30 PM to begin our 3.5 hour drive towards Cincinnati to reach Kings Island for some special night rides. Arriving just before 8 PM, we had the last 2 hours of operation. Cheers Cedar Fair for your long operating hours. This is a nice little bonus to get an extra few hours and take the pressure off ahead of tomorrow's full day visits at the park. It being a Friday night, the park was a little slammed, and Banshee had one of the lowest waits and acceptable 20 minutes, so we did Banshee. It's not bad, I don't understand the hate this ride gets, I actually really enjoy it. Next up, Orion, which was a new cred for me, was advertised at a 30-minute wait, but actually we only waited 5 minutes. Having heard a lot of negative feedback about this just about giga coaster, I was actually surprised how fun it was. We actually went around for a second lap and got the front row, which was immense as the sun was setting. Such a cracking ride, I really thought Orion was a lot of fun. One of our favourite night ride experiences at Kings Island is not the Beast. While I absolutely do recommend experiencing the Beast at night, it is as legendary as people say, and we will in the next instalment of the road trip, so make sure you're subscribed when we upload that video. It is a bit of a faff to get on the Beast at night as the operations pause for the fireworks show, meaning you have a bit of stoppage time to deal with. The best night ride at Kings Island in my opinion is Mystic Timbers, the absolutely superb GCI out and back style coaster just fucks off into the woods, and unlike the Beast there's absolutely zero lighting out there, so you're wildly bouncing up and down in complete darkness, which is absolutely nuts. The only light you see is as you climb the lift hill, leaving the main part behind. You sometimes get a fireworks or the drones going off around you, which is always a fun time. Luckily, Mystic Timbers doesn't stop operations for a nighttime show, so we managed to get a second lap, and it's one of my favourite wooden coasters, and it flies at night. So that wraps up our quite eventful day travelling from Gurney down to Cincinnati via Indiana Beach. So coming up next time on the road trip, it's our first proper full day at Kings Island. How will we fare with the Saturday crowds and no fast lane to save us? There's a giant collection of 15 roller coasters, so a hefty roller coaster bingo card to tick off too. When we do finally reach the end of the road trip series, I am putting together a special video on how to plan your own coaster road trip. So if you do have any questions about that or any topics you'd like me to cover, please do let me know in the comments below. as that would really help me out. I'd love to help you plan your own adventures. Thank you for watching if you have been, and until next time, stay safe on the way out and back.